Hey everybody, thank you for joining us at another Tom and Jesse Talk Movies here at the Cold Spring Harbor Library. I'm Tom.
I'm Jesse.
Great. And today, May is Steven Spielberg month. So like we did with Martin Scorsese, thank you. We're exploring, some of the director's work we are not familiar with. Movies we've been wanting to see, maybe movies that aren't as talked about, although the latter is definitely a popular one, but we personally want to see that. So first up this week, we will be discussing The Terminal, stars Tom Hanks, that came out in 2004, of course, directed by Steven Spielberg. This is a movie that I remember coming out at the time in 2004. Just ads were everywhere. I remember seeing the trailer so many times in theaters. And I'm like, let's use this opportunity to watch the film, explore it, and as I always try to go in with an open mind. We chose Steven Spielberg. Well, you chose him, actually. Was it? No, or did I choose him?
It might have been you.
Yeah. No, I think I chose Scorsese.
Okay.
Did I?
I'll take the credit for Spielberg.
You chose Spielberg. And it's just because, he is a director with a lot under his belt. It can always generate discussion. And, a lot of these A-list directors, you want to explore their filmography. Everyone who's even non-movie going people know Steven Spielberg. So why not expand our horizons and
I would say one of the most illustrious resumes as a filmmaker, and for, E.T., Indiana Jones, Schindler's List, and there's such a diversity of what he's directed. And I think this was kind of fun, like what we did with Martin Scorsese, where After Hours is not something that maybe you readily associate with Martin Scorsese.
Right.
The Terminal, I feel like, in the grand canon of Spielberg, is something you might not think of immediately when you
exactly. So we're like, hey, let's dive in. We'll see what we if we enjoy it or not. Not normally something I would watch, but that's why we do this, to explore and expand our horizons. So, like I said, The Terminal is directed by Steven Spielberg. It came out in 2004. It is written. The screenplay is written by Sasha Gervasi and Jeff Nathanson, who had done one of your favorite films, Gattaca, right? Is that what you said?
No, Andrew Niccol actually has a story credit.
Story by Andrew Niccol. That's the Gattaca.
I've not seen Gattaca guy. He's also the guy that wrote The Truman Show.
Yes, which we talked about a few months ago.
Yes.
I knew one of them. Right? So, Tom Hanks, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Stanley Tucci, Zoe Saldana in a random role, Diego Luna. So a couple familiar faces where I'm like, oh, this is before they really, got famous. So, the story is somewhat inspired by true events. There was a guy who was, locked in the airport for better or worse, for 18 years. That was from 1988 to 2006. He was traveling in Terminal 1 of Paris in France. That was interesting. I didn't know anything about a true story. Loosely, if you go into that guy's story, it's very different than what happens to Tom Hanks's character.
We have Kathy, our moderator, to thank for actually. I didn't know of this story, but it's a really interesting read.
I'm not going to try and read his name because I'm awful with pronouncing any name. So
I'm not going to take that plunge either.
So this was the first time watch for both of us. What did you think of The Terminal?
So very generally, I guess the synopsis would be that Tom Hanks is kind of from a war-torn country at the time, and he happens to...
Made-up country, obviously the Middle East.
It's a made-up country, and he kind of makes landfall in the United States, in New York. I believe it's JFK.
It is JFK.
And so right as he sets foot in the United States, he finds out that there's kind of been a international coup in the country where Tom Hanks' character is from, and his country is no longer officially recognized. So in essence, Tom Hanks is a man without a country, and because he's a man without a country, he has no valid passport, and he essentially cannot enter the United States until there's a resolution in the political situation that's going on. So for the majority of the film, Tom Hanks is kind of wandering around terminals. Is there anything to the plot that's important that I sort of added before we delve into?
No, you summed it up.
He's a man without a country. He's stuck in JFK.
And he's stuck in the airport.
He has no way of getting home, and he has no way of actually leaving the airport without being prosecuted.
Mm.
What did I think of it? I think that there were so many elements of this that I wanted to like, and I wanted to come away from this movie saying, boy, this was great. Tom Hanks is absolutely stellar, and I get why he's like America's sweetheart, because he's not only is he just a wonderful person, he's a mighty fine actor. My biggest issue with this film is that it was just like such a mawkish, overly sentimental movie, and it really like compromised certain characters in just trying to make it like just a light, fluffy sort of movie. And I had a lot of problems with that. So, you know, obviously we have Tom Hanks who's our protagonist. Stanley Tucci plays the head of, I guess, like security of
JFK.
Of JFK, and he's really adamant that Tom Hanks is not for any reason going to be allowed to
Leave the airport and enter American territory.
And so I should start by saying I think that Stanley Tucci in this role was great. I think he was just great. But the material that he was given was like, how do I put this? I think that he was like, it was almost cartoonish in the way that his character was presented in terms of the villain. Like it felt like a sort of road runner, Wile E. Coyote type, sort of like exaggerated, over the top, like he will stop at nothing to ensure that Tom Hanks does not enter the country. And it's like, he's so clearly delineated as being just this bad, heartless character. And Tom Hanks, conversely, is this infallibly good character. It's like, it was just so, it just felt so over the top and comedic in the way that both characters were portrayed. It's like, not everyone has to be entirely good, and not everyone has to be entirely bad. And seeing Stanley Tucci's character solely motivated by this desire to keep Tom Hanks out of the country at all costs, it's like you compromise so much of the human that Stanley Tucci's character could have been, and you only see the examples of him trying to thwart Tom Hanks in every single way. And it took so much of it, so much of the enjoyment, I feel like, away from what the movie could have been. It's like, because it's this cat and mouse game the entire time. And beyond that, I felt that this was a movie that took great liberties in trying to inflate its runtime, which was over 2 hours. I mean, you talk about, you mentioned Catherine Zeta-Jones, who plays like this quasi love interest. She did absolutely nothing for me. That character was just so inessential to moving the story forward. I got to be honest, I cared nothing for Catherine Zeta-Jones. I really found that there was like no romantic chemistry between Tom Hanks and Catherine Zeta-Jones. If you told me her character was removed from the film and you maybe shortened it by 25 minutes, I would have been like, okay, I enjoyed this movie better because of it.
Yeah.
There were so many little contrivances in the plot that just felt like it was just trying to pad and inflate the runtime unnecessarily. This movie for me would have worked better as maybe a 30 to 45 minute short film, which I know Steven Spielberg would have done. There was just, I mean, again, and there were also elements that I did like. I mean, there's this watching Tom Hanks's character sort of acclimate himself to completely foreign territory. He comes there, he doesn't speak a word of English. So seeing him, the montage of him going into a Borders bookstore, you know, getting a book from his home country and comparing it to the English, and that's how he sort of picks up the language. I thought that was inventive. I like that. There's another scene where you kind of see Diego Luna, who works as like he's kind of like a cook for an airlines, I guess. He makes airline meals. He's got this thing for Zoe Saldana, who is a customs agent.
Yes.
And you see that Diego Luna is a very shy character. He's infatuated with Zoe Saldana. So in order for Tom Hanks to be continuously fed, Tom Hanks is fed in exchange for like kind of hooking up Zoe Saldana and Luna's character. And I thought that was kind of brilliant, the way that was done. But there was too much fluff. There was too much like buoyant, overly optimistic. I'm like, where's the conflict? Yes, clearly he can't get out of the airport. Right. But it's like, there was just so much fluff around it. I mean, I didn't really care for it all altogether. I would like to know what you thought.
No, I agree with literally everything you're saying. I was not a fan of it myself. I was very much on board, no pun intended.
I like that.
The first like 20 minutes of the film, I thought it was pretty interesting. Not normally something I would watch. So I'm like, okay. But I was pretty hooked right off the bat. I was like, oh, Tom Hanks is coming from the Middle East, speaks no English, and we see what happens. And, this is in 2004. This is right after, like 9/11. So like the film does get a little political in the beginning in the sense of like how airports and security are dealing with people coming from overseas, especially,
Right.
that part of the world. And to see how that plays out on film, I mean, Stanley Tucci is the antagonist. He's like head of the security thing. And he's totally cartoony in the sense that he really gets off on he loves his job and he loves the power it gives him. And I thought that was kind of cool, but it is kind of cartoony in the way how he applies his powers. He always cracks a smile, and it's just I'm watching it and it's
he
like
wants to inflict harm on other people.
yes, and he
it's
enjoys
emotional.
that, and it's like it's interesting to see how the American JFK specifically is treating foreigners coming in, and it's very much like not with open arms, and we're being and rightfully you understand why, and considering, and it's like they really go through this grilling process, like, okay, you gotta have your passport, visa, why are you here, etc. And it seems that when Tom Hanks gets denied entry, he's right up in Stanley's office, and just the process is pretty much like, yeah, there's this war going on in your country while you were in the air and they're not recognized, have a good day. And they don't care, and it's just they don't care, and it's just I was like, that's fascinating to watch this go down. And I thought the movie would really keep that kind of tone and keep that up, but it's quickly abandoned, and the whole movie is all fluff, and it's all he's hanging out in this airport, and it slowly goes into this is all filler. I'm not really, it should be a short. There's not enough interesting material to keep this story going. Like, okay, he's living in the airport. And I was interested mostly when it was just like Tom Hanks doing his own thing, seeing him interact with other people. But then, so like at first it's hard, like he can't speak English. He's he doesn't know where to go, so he finds like this one section of the airport.
He doesn't even have currency, so like they actually
Right.
Stanley Tucci has to give him vouchers for like a
Yeah.
limited number of meals, and when he runs out of the meal vouchers, they don't accept his currency.
And it was, to me, like I said, it was fascinating where it's like the security at the airport, they do not care about what's going on, and they're trying to communicate with him, but he doesn't speak English. And I feel that, like, I'm like, why don't they bring in a translator? Why is it so much like they know Tom Hanks's character is not understanding what they're telling them about? You can't leave this airport. You're not a citizen, etc. But it's like how quick that was over. It just shows how little they care about the outside world. And I thought that was fascinating. But like I said, that kind of goes away. And then it turns into, it tries to be this romantic comedy, which I did not like at all. I like Catherine Zeta-Jones. She's pointless in the film. Her character is a total scrambled egg. She is somebody she's a flight attendant, right?
She's a flight attendant.
Yeah, and she always runs into him in the airport, and it's always she's talking about like, oh, I'm kind of dating this new guy, but yet she also flirts with Tom Hanks. So like her personal life is in disarray.
Yeah, she kind of comes across as a little bit unscrupulous because she's involved with a married man. She tells Tom Hanks's character, "Oh, I'm going to break it off," and it's like this back and forth.
It's this back and forth thing, but then she's like, "Oh, don't hang out with me."
On bad news,
on bad news, but then she'll be like, "Okay, let's have dinner." So she's all over the place. I did not enjoy that element of the film, that storyline. I did not care about. It was my least favorite part of the film. but then it turned, and I'm okay with like shifting tones where it's like in the beginning it felt very serious, and then it turns into lighthearted comedy, and then it turns into drama again. And I think we can balance those tones, but one tone to me, the drama aspect was far more interesting than any comedy and romance story they were trying to force down our throats. You see Tom Hanks's character, he befriends a couple of the workers at the airport, and that was okay, but it just seems like there's not enough going on in the film. Like this movie it should have been a brisk hour and 20 minutes, like under an hour and a half. Okay, fine.
And it might have worked better.
Might have worked
cut out some of the fluff.
If you cut out the Catherine Zeta-Jones stuff completely, maybe have them be friends and maybe have it be more serious, where it's like at the point in the film when he meets her, he's learning more English. And that was interesting to see how he learned English. See, that stuff was cool. And watching him have Burger King, I guess, for the first time, that stuff was cool. So like maybe they could have used her character almost more as like a therapist kind of character, sit and chat, and like how is it really affecting him? But Tom Hanks seems to be having a grand old time. He does not seem concerned, and it was just like
there's like that very brief moment, right, when he's trying to understand what the news station is telling him.
Right, because they have a news network on in the airport. And he's like, oh, that's,
and he's horrified initially, and then
that's it. It's over.
Right, like
so
15 minutes later, it's like,
and then he's laughing, he's running around, where it's almost like Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone 2 in the city, and I'm just like. I finished the movie and I was just like, that was just stupid.
Right. There's such a jarring shift in tone.
I felt no sense of Spielberg doing this movie whatsoever. Tom Hanks is great. He's likable. It's easy, because that is kind of a scary thing. And it's like, I mean, not everything has to be dark and serious, but I would have liked to see this kind of movie pan out that way. Right. And then by the end of the movie, I was like, oh, that's it. Well, that was convenient. That sounds stupid. Okay. And it's like, I'm not letting it take up any more space inside my head. It's completely forgettable. And I was just not at all interested at that point. And just like the ending itself, just like, there is an ending and I'm not going to spoil it, but I was just like, oh, okay. I appreciated when we got some background character on him. Throughout the movie, he holds this container of Planters peanuts or whatever,
which is a big hush hush. You don't know what's in it.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, what is in it? And even security wants to know. And then you find out, and you're like, okay, that's kind of interesting, far more interesting than what else we were seeing. But I was just like, oh, okay, that's cute for 5 minutes.
And that was my problem too. That's an excellent point that you make, because it sort of the very human, in-depth characterization of Tom Hanks, you don't see until like the last 25 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm like, I certainly feel for his plight, but it's like, give me a little bit of backstory. You're coming from a war, a war-torn country.
Yeah.
Let me know a little bit more about your experience living it. And like you said, Catherine Zeta-Jones's character, it didn't have to be romantic. Bounce feedback, like tell her what you're going through. You might just need someone to talk to.
Exactly. And he was just, I think Looney Tunes is the best way to describe, because he feels like Bugs Bunny, and then it is a cat and mouse thing. And we're constantly cutting to like the security office, and you find out Stanley Tucci's character is getting this big promotion. And like, I like that, but let's play into that more. You introduce us with such good concepts, and then to not explore them, it's like, he has all the power, and he's just totally screwing with him of like, I want to keep him here, but keep an eye on him. And then there's one point early on where it's like, let's get him to leave.
Right.
Because then he doesn't leave.
Because if he leaves, then he would be arrested and he would not be part of the airport's
Exactly. And it's just like, there's a total lack of empathy from the security about, we're letting people into our country, but we don't care.
Right.
We don't care. They don't matter. So just let them stay in the airport. We don't really care. Explore that. And instead we get it like a goofy comedy that
I
didn't care.
And another example of that sort of goofiness would be, which I have to say, I did enjoy this part, when Tom Hanks loses his meal vouchers initially. So he doesn't have money. He doesn't have a way to eat. He sees that if you return the carts, that your luggage carts, you get like a quarter back.
Yeah.
So there's this funny montage, and it's funny. He goes around the airport and he's like returning everyone's luggage cart so he can get enough money to buy a burger from Burger King. And I thought that was funny. But immediately you flash to Stanley Tucci's face, and he's bitter, and it's like there was another obstacle that was suddenly avoided, and he can't thwart it. So it was like it was like Home Alone. It was like Daniel Stern and Joe Pesci.
Oh yeah, cartoony, totally.
And I have to say, going back to the beginning of the movie, I was so gripped because from the opening scene, it's just this frenetic and chaotic scene of JFK, and it's like you see.
I've been to JFK once, and just like I've never. I've been to Mexico a couple of times.
Right.
That's it. But it's fascinating. Let's explore what is it like for someone from Germany to come here, or China, and what did they experience?
I have issues with how far they diverted from the beginning tone of the movie, where you're really setting the scene. So, again, Stanley Tucci sees like a group of Asian tourists, and they're all kind of wearing like Mickey Mouse ears, and he goes, well, none of them are wearing. Why do none of them have cameras? Don't you find that odd that no tourist would have a camera? And they immediately jump on them, and of course that this was some. Ultimately it was going to be some scam that these Asian tourists were running. But it's like, oh, that's so interesting. And then you bring in Tom Hanks's character, who in the midst of all this is just trying to get into the country. Yeah. So that was so deftly put together because you just see the chaos that's unfolding. And as soon as, like you said, as soon as Stanley Tucci tells him, okay, war-torn country, can't get in, it's like 15 minutes of grieving and being at a loss later. He's like chowing down at Burger King.
Yeah.
I'm like, where the heck did where did it go wrong?
It totally shifts.
If you showed me more of those first 15 minutes, I would have been on my seat. And like you said, it's not like this movie couldn't have had elements of comedy. But not everyone is solely evil.
And I also found a major plot hole in the film in the sense that you're telling me nobody else from this country came to the airport. I mean, I guess they locked everything else. He's the only person this is happening to. Like, I understand, okay, like they probably stopped it on that country's end too, but it's like you're telling me he's the only person from that country that was in the air at that time. I don't know.
How about another interesting element, and this is not something that we ordinarily do, but instead of Catherine Zeta-Jones's character, say you have a fellow compatriot, like Tom Hanks happens to find a fellow countryman or woman, like, 20 minutes before the film ends, whatever it might be. And it's like, oh, you were here the whole time and we were both, anything would have
done something like that.
Anything would have been better than that completely inappropriate and just unnecessary relationship with Catherine Zeta-Jones, who was in one scene.
They have no chemistry.
There was zero chemistry. There was no purpose.
I feel bad for the actress that this is what role she got, because it's not a well done role.
It's not a well done.
She's great.
She's a fine actress. Stanley Tucci is a fine actor.
Yeah. Although I will say he is cast perfectly in that role. Because I always found Stanley Tucci, he always plays the obnoxious, sarcastic, kind of flamboyant.
And he does that well.
He does that well. He's the same in every movie, I think. But,
right. So it's disappointing because, again, there were so many elements where I could have walked away and felt, boy, that was a really good movie. It was just so forgettable. If I didn't see the name Steven Spielberg on there anywhere, I wouldn't have been able to tell you it was a Steven Spielberg.
I would say make this movie now, release it now, have somebody else play the lead character and make it serious and have it be a drama, and I think that would be a little bit more interesting.
Bruce Willis is Stanley Tucci. Could you see it?
Not like that. I was thinking Ben Kingsley, but
okay. All right. Well, fair enough.
So I think that concludes the terminal talk.
Yes.
Next show, we're going to be discussing Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is the first of the Indiana
I have not
Jones
seen
films.
this movie since I was a kid. I don't remember any of it.
I don't know if I've ever seen it all the way through. I know that I've seen bits and pieces. This one, I was more excited for Raiders of the Lost Ark because I do like Harrison Ford. This is an iconic franchise, and if I like it, there's still 3 more movies after that. For better or worse.
You could say 2 more movies and no one would fault you. Yeah.
And apparently I've heard Harrison Ford's returning for the 5th film, which
and Mads Mikkelsen just came on.
Which is he's great as well. Yes. So that I am looking forward to. Steven Spielberg's work I always enjoy. I mean, I so many of his movies. I
They're
love
iconic.
Yeah, I love War of the Worlds. I thought that was really good.
Haven't
To
seen
me, Spielberg does one thing really. He does many things well, but I think he's really good with his characters. He's really good at building families, and I always thought the War of the Worlds 2005 film with Tom Cruise was really just the epitome of what Spielberg does well. Even though there are some script issues, it embodies what Spielberg is really there for. So whenever I've seen a Spielberg film, I've been like, what the plot was basic, but I really enjoyed the characters. I felt they were relatable, and that was lacking here in the Terminator. So
Yeah. No.
okay, so any questions, you guys can email us at programs@cshlibrary.org. Let us know how we're doing, suggestions for the future. Did you watch The Terminal? The film is currently streaming on Hulu. So if you have that, it's free. I did watch it through Hulu. You can also come to your local library.
I got it from here.
We own a copy. So yeah, put in your requests and we'd love to hear what everyone thinks.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you.